Hello and welcome. This is everything you need to know for Week 8 fantasy football. We'll highlight everything we saw in Week 7 and what you need to know going forward. All right, Evan, let's start with the biggest story from a fantasy perspective / real life perspective of the week. The Cleveland Browns start Deshaun Watson in this game, even though he seemed very questionable with a right throwing shoulder injury. Seems like he was under heavy pressure to play from the fans, the media, management. He got out there, and I'm no tape bro, Evan, but he looked awful. Like, just could not throw the ball with any zip whatsoever. Gets picked off twice, gets checked for a concussion after the last interception. Didn't have a concussion, he was fine, but never gets back into the game. PJ Walker ends up leading them to a 39-38 win over the Colts. I'm not sure what's going on with Deshaun Watson here. It seems like there's something wrong with the shoulder. Seems like there's also something else going on off the field. It's just really weird. Any thoughts on Deshaun Watson from what we saw in this Colts game? Any other Browns thoughts?
Yeah, he's just rolling to his left and, gets outside of the pocket, takes a hit as he's trying to get a pass off, and that was the end of that. I don't know what to think. I mean, I think that there have been like strange vibes around this. I've been talking about this for weeks. Something weird is going on here. I don't know if the guy, doesn't want to play. I mean, he played early in the season. He didn't play for like 2 years, and he comes back and he's like, he don't want to get hit. I don't blame him. That's there's a lot of pain involved with that. But it's also possible that his injury is more significant than they've let on. I mean, it's supposedly a bruised rotator cuff. I have no idea. I'm throwing up my hands on this one.
I watched the Bill Walton 30 for 30 thing on ESPN, and I love Bill Walton. But this kind of reminds me of that, where the team, the fans, the media, everyone assumes that he's healthy. They're throwing him under the bus. But the player himself feels like he can't play. And that's what I saw, at least from the limited time he was out there. Did not look like he should be out there. We'll see on his status.
That's fair.
Other story on this game was, unfortunately, Jerome Ford, who was off to an awesome start, sustained a low, what they're calling, and I know, Evan, you don't buy this, what they're calling is a low-grade high ankle sprain. Now, we all know there's no such thing as a not severe high ankle sprain. At first they were like, oh, Kyren Williams is going to be fine. Next thing you know, Kyren Williams is on IR. So I am a little bit worried here on Jerome Ford. Anyways, no Jerome Ford, no Nick Chubb for at least the next 1 to 2 weeks on Ford. Obviously, Chubb is done for the season. They have Kareem Hunt. They have Pierre Strong. Then they added Jordan Wilkins here today. Deion Jackson was waived, could be re-signed to the practice squad. We'll see. How do you think the backfield goes now, Evan, with Jerome Ford sidelined?
Well, it's just a disappointing situation because Jerome Ford was like on track for a monster game. I think he still finished with 18 DraftKings points, but he broke a 69-yard touchdown run. He had 2 catches for 20 yards early. I mean, he was on track to be, the play of the week at 5,100 on DraftKings. And, we lost that opportunity for him to really, really smash. Kareem Hunt comes in. He's looked okay, I think, in reserve. He's gotten banged up. He didn't have a training camp. And then after that, we're looking at Pierre Strong, who's primarily been a special teamer. He did have 8 carries on Sunday. And then, as you mentioned, they just signed Jordan Wilkins, the ex-Indianapolis Colt, to be their number 3, maybe bring back Deion Jackson at some point. I think it's going to be the Kareem Hunt show primarily.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. I don't think they trust Pierre Strong to play a lot on offense. Obviously, they just got Jordan Wilkins. Don't think much of Deion Jackson. Kareem Hunt is the guy that has been with the team and shown an ability to be a really good NFL running back. He's not maybe at the same level as he once was anymore, but I still think Kareem Hunt is going to see a big workload here for the Browns. Last Brown note I had was I ended up playing David Njoku on cash on FanDuel, and man, we got awesome usage. 72 out of 75 snaps, 27 of them slaughter wide, had a 24% target share, came really close to 2 touchdowns, had one knocked out of his hands, dropped another potential one. But man, David Njoku is such a good athlete with this kind of usage at the tight end position when he's so cheap and late round. It's just like close my eyes and hope that David Njoku can come down with some of these touchdowns.
Yeah, I wound up playing Amari Cooper, who was a dud. He did see 8 targets. He finished with 2 for 22. He did draw a holding penalty in the end zone. He ran a sick little double move, and the Colts player had to grab him.
Yeah.
And that contributed to, on their game-winning drive. but that was a slow game for him. Elijah Moore got 7 targets in this game, continues to be a player who sees pretty good volume and really does very little with it. Finished with 4 for 59.
Let's go to the second biggest story of the week, the Atlanta Falcons. So Falcons get a really big win for them at Tampa, a division win on the road. Now the Falcons are in first place in the division at 4-3. The story of the game, however, was not that. It was this Bijan Robinson situation. I spent like 5-7 minutes on the solo pod talking about the Bijan Robinson situation. Hopefully you guys all check that out. Bottom line is he was sick on Saturday. There was no reporting, nothing. Ends up not playing hardly at all. Does get a carry with 33 seconds left in the game. Falcons should have reported this, period. Falcons should have reported this when they found out about it. The NFL is investigating, but I don't think there's any like bigger story here. Kid was sick. Coach didn't want to put him out there. I think that's probably the right thing to do. My concern, though, is this reminds me of, you remember Percy Harvin, Evan, who like could never get over the migraine stuff. Scottie Pippen had major migraine issues. We've seen other guys. I'm no doctor. I don't want to say that. I hope that it's just the kid was sick or whatever. But yeah, any thoughts on the Bijan situation? Any other Falcons thoughts off their win?
Yeah, he should have been added to the injury report on Saturday with an illness and listed as questionable.
Right.
I don't know. I think that the Falcons are probably going to end up getting fined for that, because we're at the point where the NFL is like affiliated with fantasy football, is affiliated with sports betting, and that really pissed a lot of people off. That's not good for the league, for teams to not be reporting that kind of a thing. Tyler Algier winds up with 24 touches. Cordero Patterson has a nice little game, 10 for 56. I thought it was interesting. So the Falcons moved Van Jefferson, who they just acquired via trade for the Rams, into the slot. Drake London is the number 1. Kyle Pitts operated as the number 2 wide receiver. As Mike Clay pointed out, wound up running 15 of his 19 routes against Carlton Davis and Jamel Dean.
Yeah.
That is not really a productive way to use Kyle Pitts, have him running routes against cornerbacks. And he wound up with 3 for 47 on 4 targets, but that's not a productive way to use, your big athletic tight end.
Of course. And like people
want him running routes against linebackers and safeties.
And other coaches are very good at getting their best offensive weapons into the best matchups. I mean, look at what Mike McDaniel is doing with Tyreek Hill. And you could keep going on and on down the list. People want to complain a ton about Arthur Smith and how he's used his players. That is merited. I think what happened with Bijan, outside of the not reporting and stuff, is not as merited to kill Arthur Smith over. All right. Rams. So Rams drop a home game to the Steelers here. This was their first game with Kyren Williams on injured reserve with that ankle injury. In this game, Darrell Henderson comes straight off the street to lead the team in snaps with 39. Royce Freeman was next with 29. Zach Evans got 0. And like all the Dynasty bros, everybody who picked up Zach Evans, they just don't trust him, period, like to play at all. Routes were D Hendo 12, Freeman 7, opportunities D Hendo 20, Freeman 12. They were effective, the running backs were in this game, and they were also voluminous in this game in terms of touches, both Freeman and Henderson. Myles Gaskin could be active next week, but I think Henderson and Royce Freeman looked good enough to kind of handle the same kind of usage again. Evan, what do you think of Rams running back in their first game without Kyren?
Yeah, I think you broke it down pretty succinctly there. Darrell Henderson was the pretty clear number 1. Their running game has been pretty effective all year, no matter which running back has been back there. And they remained fairly productive in this particular game. Darrell Henderson, 19 touches. Royce Freeman, 12 carries for 66. I would expect the backfield to go similarly in week 8. And Zach Evans to remain unutilized, barring an injury to one of the top guys. I think that really the interesting takeaway in this game was the continued domination of Puka Nacua, who I think if the NFL draft was redone today, the 2023 NFL draft, he'd be a first-round pick in the draft. And he has a higher target share than Cooper Kupp since Cooper Kupp returned 3 games ago. Puka had a slow game mixed in there at one point. I think, some people, might have overreacted to that. He's an every week fantasy starter and every week wide receiver one.
Oh yeah, big time. I mean, since Cooper Kupp came back three games ago, Puka's seen 33% of the targets. Cooper Kupp 28%, 229. Now I do think Cooper Kupp will end up out targeting Puka Nacua this season, but Puka is not going away. And like, given the way Pittsburgh played this game and given the state of the Rams offensive line, getting the ball out quick over the middle, which is where Puka has been winning, is just, a total smash.
Puka Nacua, number 6 in the NFL right now in yards per route run.
Fourth story of the week is the Buffalo Bills go somehow to New England and lose. I don't know how the Bills lost this game. I mean, Bills defense gave up the best game I've seen from Mac Jones in a long while. We can get to that in a second here, though, Evan. The big injury story, though, out of Buffalo was Dawson Knox having to undergo wrist surgery in the wake of this game. Unclear how long he'll be out. Quentin Morris is hurt, too. I mean, they're basically down to only Dalton Kincaid at tight end. And this is important because they have run so many 2 tight end sets. So we get a Dalton Kincaid breakout here. Usage was kind of similar, though, to what it's been. He ran 29 routes, which was in line with how many routes he runs on a normal game. His ADOT was again concerning, only 4.6 yards, but volume was there with Dawson Knox out and with Dawson Knox getting hurt and Quentin Morris hurt. Dalton Kincaid, 8 targets, caught all 8 for 75 yards. No touchdowns. So what are your thoughts on the Dawson Knox injury? Anything else on the Bills?
Yeah, I mean, it's just the season parted for Dalton Kincaid, who I think the best way to sort of project him even entering the season was that he was going to be kind of slow out of the gate and that he was going to more and more earn a bigger role as the season progresses. That's going to be accelerated. That timeline is going to be accelerated because Dawson Knox is now out indefinitely. As for the Bills, they just had this tendency to get off to really slow starts in games. Their running game has been explosive at times with James Cook, but also really up and down. And they have sort of removed the running element from Josh Allen because they wanted to, focus on getting James Cook cooking. And I mean, that has happened at times, but it's also taken away one of their best weapons. Not using Josh Allen as much as a runner. He's still been great in fantasy, and I think he's been really good in real life with the exception of a few boneheaded turnovers. But I wonder if they change that and they go back to using Josh Allen as a runner more because, I mean, they need like another weapon at this point, and that they like effectively remove that weapon from their team. I also think that they have a chance to be like a big-time shootout team for the foreseeable future. They play Tampa Bay on Thursday night this week. After that, their schedule gets brutal, number one. Number two, they've been without both of their starting defensive tackles, Daquan Jones and Ed Oliver. Since the end of last season, they lost both of their starting inside linebackers. Tremaine Edmonds signed with the Bears, and Matt Milano is out for the year. And they lost their best cornerback, Tre'Davious White, and their stud safeties who have been sort of the foundation of their defense. They've been in and out of the lineup. And Von Miller has only played 53 snaps on the season. And it sounds like he aggravated his knee injury against New England. So I think that they're going to be a big-time shootout team the rest of the way. A lot of back-and-forth affairs coming for the Bills against a really tough schedule.
Yeah, I mean, Bucks, Bengals, then Broncos, Jets, but then Eagles, Chiefs, Cowboys, Chargers. I mean, yeah, it's going to start to get a bit tough here. If they want to win games, Josh Allen needs to run more. I think that's just, and I think that's probably going to come to fruition. I hate saying stuff that's like cliche and anecdotal, but feels to me like the Bills play to the level of their competition so often. And I hate saying that without any data to back it up, but that's just what it feels like to me. Oh, by the way, Damian Harris was hurt for this game. James Cook well ahead of Latavius Murray because they were losing. Ends up 16 opportunities for James Cook, only 6 for Latavius. Do think Latavius will touch the ball more in scripts where they're winning the game.
Yeah, Damian Harris out. He went on IR, so he will be out for at least 3 more games.
Fifth biggest story of the week was last night. Minnesota Vikings, massive win for the Vikings to kind of save their season almost, or give their season some hope. Kirk Cousins lights up the elite San Francisco defense, 35 of 45 for 378 yards and 2 touchdowns. The star, of course, was the breakout of Jordan Addison. Now in 2 games without Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison has run 66 routes on 78 Kirk Cousins dropbacks, earned 15 targets for a 20% share, 10 catches, 151 yards, 3 touchdowns. So, man, dude looks like he can play. Now, that one play that he had the long touchdown on was kind of fluky. He ripped the ball out of the defensive back's arms, but still a great play. Evan, how sticky do you think this Jordan Addison breakout is? How anything else on the Vikings for you?
I think it's sticky. I mean, I think that he's looked excellent since game one. And now he's been promoted into the number 1 receiver role, and he is dominating in that role. You remember Daniel Jeremiah had him as a top 10 overall player in this year's draft. I mean, the Vikings, they got a big-time hit on Jordan.
And they got him after Quentin Johnston, too.
Yep, and Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Yeah.
So great pick by the Vikings, and I think he's going to continue to crush it.
Yeah.
I think the one thing that stood out in this game, though, was the clean pocket, the squeaky clean pocket from which Kirk Cousins was able to deliver the football. The Vikings offensive line is kind of rolling. That's been a big weakness of theirs for the past half decade, and their offensive line is playing really, really well. Yeah, I'm looking. Okay, so the 49ers did get 6 hits on them. The 49ers are loaded up front, though, and that was on 51 dropbacks, only 0 sacks. Zero sacks on 45 dropbacks. So really great outing for the Vikings passing game, which, you thought was kind of headed south without Justin Jefferson. This was a huge performance for them.
Yeah, and Kirk Cousins was holding the ball for a long time. A lot of those hits were like he held it for a long time, released it, and then took a big hit. Did look to me like Alexander Mattison got banged up late in the game. Didn't really hear anything about it afterwards, but Akers closed out the game, ended up with 13 opportunities to Madison's 11. Just something to watch there. All right. Go to the NFC now, where we go team by team. Start with the Arizona Cardinals. Arizona Cardinals fall to 1-6, low scoring loss at Seattle. Big news after the game was Zach Ertz was placed on IR. And I mean, to me, just irresponsible and inexcusable from the Cardinals to not get anything for Zach Ertz before the season, after he was playing well for the first couple of weeks. Do what do what the Jets did with McCole Hardman, or what the Rams did with Van Jefferson. Teams will give you a 7th round pick for some of these guys, or a 6th round pick. Not a big deal. But now we finally, at long last, Evan, one of my best ball exposures is Trey McBride. I know he's a Mackey Award winner. How excited should the people be, Evan, about a full-time role for Trey McBride here in the wake of Zach Ertz's injury?
I would say fairly excited. What are your thoughts on when Kyler Murray is going to come back? Because I would rather have Kyler Murray in there for the sake of Trey McBride than Josh Dobbs.
From a financial perspective, the Cardinals should not bring Kyler Murray back. However, they have been adamant that they're going to, and I think he'll play either week 9 or week 10.
Yep. I'm going to put that I think that he, in the matchups column, that I think he'll be back in week 9. Jonathan Gannon did already announced that Josh Dobbs is going to be their starter in week 8. There's a dude on Twitter who's like best friends with Jonathan Gannon and like is not shy about it. And like, he's like Kyler Murray is going to play like as soon as they deem him ready, and he's going to play sooner rather than later this year.
Yeah.
And I mean, I tend to believe him.
I believe it too. By the way, Keontae Ingram went from a really good role, or at least a solid role, in week 6 to completely benched in week 7. 0 offensive snaps for Keontae Ingram in week 7. They decided to feature Amir DeMercado in a big way. Dude played 54 snaps after it looked like he was getting phased out. So just really volatile in the backfield right now. I ended up not playing any of these guys just because I'm kind of throwing my hands up. Do you have any read on what's going on Cardinals backfield, Evan?
Not really. I think they're just kind of throwing crap against the wall. Keontae Ingram isn't good, though. So, no one should really be surprised that all of a sudden this player who's, replacement level got weeded out of the backfield. Rondale Moore did have 4 carries for 24 in this game. How I feel about him. I think that he should be getting 6, 7, 8 a game.
Let's go to the Carolina Panthers. They were on a bye. They will come out of that bye to host the Houston Texans. And during the bye, we have a running back controversy. Normally it's like quarterback controversy. Running back controversy. Frank Reich said they'll be going to a committee, would decline to even name Miles Sanders his running back 1 as I've been saying all year, I thought this was the right thing to do, man. I mean, all the data, all the underlying metrics, Chuba Hubbard has been better than Miles Sanders. It is embarrassing. I get that for the Panthers after they gave Miles Sanders $24 million, which was probably the most idiotic move in all of free agency. But they've, at least to their credit, come to grips with that Chuba is probably better. So I would have it somewhere around 50-50 going forward. Any thoughts on Frank Reich's comments on Miles Sanders here, Evan?
Yeah, talk about embarrassment. I mean, not just the running back situation, but now they got this game coming up against CJ Stroud. After Frank Reich already called out the owner, and there are rumors running rampant that Frank Reich never even wanted Bryce Young, and CJ Stroud has, outplayed him exponentially. So also Frank Reich just handed off play calling duties to the offensive coordinator, Thomas Brown. He's a former running back himself, so I'm sure that he's very opinionated about Chuba Hubbard versus Miles Sanders. They granted Terrace Marshall permission to seek a trade for whatever that's worth. But yeah, the Panthers coming off their Week 7 bye, about to host Houston.
I just want to say on Thomas Brown, so I'm optimistic on him. He's only 36 years old. You guys know I like young, fresh minds. He was with Sean McVay from 2020 to 2022 as a coach, was Thomas Brown. My only concern is for the Adam Thielen bros out there. It's working. Adam Thielen's been crushing, but just changing up any offensive philosophy would obviously be bad for Adam Thielen because he's just been crushing so hard. So I'm not worried about it, but I just think there's more volatility in Adam Thielen this week, given that we have someone else calling plays and running the offense. Chicago. Tyson Agent was actually competent in an easy win over Brian Hoyer and the Raiders. Evan, I'm sure that the people in Chicago right now are saying we need to trade Justin Fields before the trade deadline, go with Tyson Bagent, and draft whatever we can at quarterback in the draft. That actually doesn't seem that crazy to me. That's not even that crazy of a laundry bro take to me. There are teams out there who could use Justin Fields, I think. So, Evan, what do you think of Tyson Bagent, and any idea how this is going to go going forward?
Yeah, I don't think that people here are really saying that. I think that they kind of fell in love with Justin Fields, and so they want to see him succeed, come back and succeed. But to get a victory, I mean, then maybe, I don't know, will they be able to grab one from the Chargers on Sunday Night Football? That would be huge. That would rally a lot of support behind Tyson Bagent. But who cares what the Bears fans want? Obviously what stuck out in this game, and Darrington Evans continued to play a significant role, but it was Deontay Foreman really got rolling in this game. He was really effective in the passing game as well. And they played pretty well on defense. Now, it was against Brian Hoyer and Aiden O'Connell, but you could and they've used a lot of draft picks on their secondary, and you could start to see that come together a little bit here. I don't know, pretty nice win for the Bears. I don't know how much it really matters. I think they're better off losing.
Of course. The only thing I'd say on the Foreman stuff is that, obviously we were really disappointed. And I talked about this on the solo pod also about Foreman's Week 6 performance. He was so good in Week 7, though, that even if Roshan Johnson gets cleared from his concussion this week, I kind of think that the Bears are going to go full-blown committee. They're not going to give the keys to Roshan while Khalil Herbert is out, because Foreman's good, and I think they saw that against the Raiders. So, yeah, I'm optimistic that Roshan Johnson will be cleared for this week. I just have to think a lot about what his role is going to be versus Foreman versus Darrington Evans, because I think that's certainly a story.
Yeah, I think that one thing that has stood out about the Bears also is that they have the ability to run block pretty well. So that's something that they can ride. I mean, this rookie Darnell Wright, who they drafted out of Tennessee, has been absolutely crushing it. And their interior offensive line with Tevin Jenkins back has been pretty darn good. I mean, they've been able to run the football pretty consistently, whether it is Khalil Herbert or Roshan or Deontay Foreman. They've been running the ball well.
Let's go to the Dallas Cowboys. They will come out of their bye to face the Los Angeles Rams in a home game. That marks the start of a really soft schedule for the Cowboys. It goes Rams, Eagles, Giants, Panthers, Commanders, Seahawks next 6 weeks. I think a really good chance to get everyone going. CD, Pollard, Dak. I thought we saw signs in that Chargers game before the bye that they were ready to make some kind of leaps here. Any thoughts on the Cowboys as they come out of their bye, Evan?
The only note that I had was that they are going to be out or without, I think, Trayvon Diggs for the rest of the year and Leighton Vander Esch. And in recent weeks, without those guys, their defense didn't look as dominant. So I don't know. Maybe we'll get some shootouts from Dallas down the stretch.
Yep. I actually saw, for you guys who, I know we've talked on here a bunch about how many good defenses there are in this year's NFL. Bill Barnwell wrote an article on ESPN about who he thinks the best defenses are in the NFL. He actually had Chiefs ahead of Cowboys, in part due to the injuries Evan is talking about. And man, we'll get to the Chiefs in a second here, but like giving Patrick Mahomes also the second best defense in the entire NFL, that's scary, man.
That's how they're playing for sure. Yeah.
Lions went to Baltimore and got absolutely trounced. They were down 28-0 at halftime, 35-0 at the end of 3. They could not stop Lamar Jackson whatsoever. The most optimistic fantasy thing I could say from this game is I was like, oh, they're going to pull him. They're going to pull Gibbs. They're going to pull Jared Goff. They're down 35-0. They didn't pull these guys. And that stuff kind of matters for fantasy, just knowing that like these guys are going to stay in even in blowouts, just on the margins. But I thought it was worth noting. Evan, any thoughts after Detroit got absolutely wrecked by the Ravens in Baltimore?
Well, it's kind of been an ongoing theme and really with an ongoing thing for Jared Goff, his home road splits, and that extends to the team. I mean, he's the quarterback, he's the literal field general out there. The only positive takeaway that you could have, well, Amon-Ra St. Brown gets there every single week. It doesn't matter who the opponent is. He just gets there. But Jahmyr Gibbs, 20 of 24 backfield touches, barely left the field against the Ravens. Had a really nice fantasy game. I mean, he had 9 catches, another 6 grabs for Sam Laporta. So, I mean, I think that they're going to bounce back. But, the home road stuff is kind of real, not to the extent that they're going to score 6 points when they're on the road usually. The Ravens defense deserves a lot of credit, too. I mean, their defensive coordinator, Mike McDonald, I think will be a guy that will start generating head coaching chatter after this year if they continue to play at the level, because they're not really as talented as they have been in years past, and he's really maximizing it.
They're balling big time. Yeah, I was really encouraged by Jahmyr Gibbs too. It just shows that they don't think of Jahmyr Gibbs as a satellite back. They think he can be a feature back. They just don't use him like that because they really like David Montgomery when David Montgomery's healthy. But do expect David Montgomery to miss week 8 here as well before the bye. Jameson Williams, disappointing, man. Ran 26 routes, saw 6 targets, 0 catches here for Jameson Williams. Green Bay goes out to Denver. I know a lot of people thought they would play well. I thought they would play well. They did not. This was a bad loss. Also lost Christian Watson and Luke Musgrave to injuries. Christian Watson, late knee injury. Luke Musgrave, late ankle injury. Have not seen updates on that other than they're not considered overly severe. Evan, what do you think of Jordan Love's latest egg this time in Denver?
Yeah, I mean, just continuing to lose confidence that Jordan Love is the dude for the foreseeable future in Green Bay. In fairness, the offensive line has been very problematic, and Christian Watson has been in and out of the lineup. I mean, he's their number 1 receiver. He got hurt again. Now, it was very late in the game, and I think he's going to be okay. It sounds like it maybe, but, another injury for a dude who, through the beginning of his career has been made of glass. But Jordan Love's accuracy really comes and goes, and as we've talked about before, his pocket presence just is not there. And that is exacerbated by the injuries and the poor play that the Packers have had on the offensive line.
Yeah, look, I was like all in on Christian Watson when he was there in round 4 and round 5. I took him so much this summer. I am concerned, worried in a big way because Jordan Love has been way worse than I even thought he was. And he was actually better when Christian Watson wasn't out there. Like the first couple of weeks, I didn't think Jordan Love was great, but he was better than he is now. We also have Christian Watson not separating from guys like Dobbs and Jaden Reed and Musgrave and targets. So yeah, and maybe there's some Patrick Surtain stuff there. I didn't see how much he was on Christian Watson, but to me, that's not an excuse. So yeah, I mean, certainly majorly concerned on Christian Watson right now. Other Green Bay note I had was frustrated on Aaron Jones. Thought that he was closer to 100%, ends up getting out carried by A.J. Dillon 15-8. Aaron Jones also got 5 targets, but they had Emmanuel Wilson playing in there too. So clearly trying to be limited and take it easy on Aaron Jones' hamstring here, which was frustrating for sure. Saints. This is a game everybody saw, an island game. I mean, my God, this was captain check down Derek Carr. 14 more targets for Alvin Kamara just a couple weeks after he had, I believe it was a 15 or 13 target game I mean, obviously this won't sustain, but Alvin Kamara's 17-game pace right now is 149 catches. The running back record is 116. Derek Carr is not even looking in the middle of the field. It's either like deep, low percentage shots or checkdowns to Kamara. Really tough way to make a living. Evan, what do you think of Saints' latest loss this time against the Jacksonville Jaguars on Thursday Night Football?
I mean, I don't know if you can blame it on the shoulder injury or what have you. I mean, they let him drop back to pass 56 times in this game. My guess is that his shoulder is fine. He's just not playing well at all. I mean, he's king of the not only the check down, but the throwaway, king of, one of his teammates makes a mistake, he's screaming at him. I mean, he had to like publicly apologize about that. His performance was embarrassing, honestly, from a guy who's been in the league for 10 years. Out there screaming at dudes. I mean, look, I get it. The one play, the play down the right sideline where it looked like Chris Olave stopped on his route and Derek Carr was just like chewing him a new one. That looked bad on Chris Olave's behalf. But I mean, Derek Carr, you're supposed to be a leader, and he has not been a leader, and he has played really, really poorly. The Saints were in this game without a bunch of offensive linemen. And Chris Olave, they didn't even play Trevor Penning, their first round pick from 2022, even though they had they were without both of their starting offensive tackles and the swing tackle, and they still didn't play Trevor Penning. So I don't know if they're just throwing in the towel on him. He hasn't been good. It's not like he deserves to be playing, but that's a disaster if you use the number 19 overall pick or whatever on Trevor Penning, and then he's not even playing when you're missing all your other offensive tackles. Yeah. Chris Olave was arrested Monday for driving 70 in a 35. I don't think anything is going to come of it, but, it's just negative vibes out of New Orleans.
For sure. They do have a very, very good matchup for Derek Carr this week, I think, at the Colts on the turf. Should be a very good spot for Derek Carr.
And Olave.
And Olave for them to get going. But yeah, certainly not pretty right now for the Saints. Also expecting Jamal Williams to start working in a little more, especially in scripts where they're leading and they want to give Alvin Kamara a little bit of a break. Alvin Kamara's usage has been insane. Giants. So you knew this was going to happen, right? Ty God, one of my favorite NFL players of all time, Ty God Taylor, goes out and plays reasonably well, 18 of 29 for 279, 2 touchdowns against the Commanders. And now everyone in New York is saying, oh, well, we should stick with Tyrod over Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones had one good half of football all year. Obviously, the Giants can't do that. They just paid Daniel Jones a ton of money. Obviously, I think Daniel Jones would have won this game also, given the way it played out. But you can't deny Tyrod Taylor is a fantasy asset in the right spot, and this was certainly the right spot. Evan, what do you think of Giants' low-scoring win over the Commanders?
Yeah, and we talked up a little bit as a play. You did, in particular.
Yeah.
In DFS. And I mean, he had like a legitimately good game. 9.6 yards per pass attempt, ran 8 for 25, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Saquon Waller had his first big game as a Giant. Hyatt had a couple of big-time downfield plays. I don't know. I mean, I think that they should keep playing Tyrod. Saquon Barkley had his first 100-yard rushing game since last Christmas Eve. He hyperextended his left elbow, but it sounds like he's going to be fine. He had 24 touches in this game, 28 touches in the previous game. Knock on wood, I think that he's over his high ankle sprain.
Yeah, I mean, insane usage for Saquon Barkley. And this is running back usage where they actually think, and they're probably right, they actually think Saquon Barkley matters to their win equity. And so when he's healthy, they're just like, how many times can we get Saquon the ball? And it's just the way it's going to play out. Darren Waller, obvious breakout. Not obvious, but a clean spot for him finally here and produces 798. Good to see on Darren Waller. Eagles. Really good win for the Eagles on Sunday Night Football over the Dolphins. Really good for Jalen Hurts. MVP tickets here. I think the fantasy note is that people are really starting to worry about Devonta Smith pretty hard. Remember last year, Devonta was pretty much even with A.J. Brown in targets. This year, A.J. Brown has gone full-blown alpha. I mean, he's just playing unreal. Almost 31% of the targets now for A.J. Brown, which is elite. Devonta, as a result, down to 20.5% on the year. So when AJ Brown's playing like this, man, it's hard. It's hard for Devontae to earn a huge amount of targets. Doesn't mean that he can't. Evan, what do you think of Eagles' win over the Dolphins on Sunday night?
Yeah, A.J. Brown is just on another level right now. Over 125 or more receiving yards in 5 straight games. He was 50-1 Offensive Player of the Year last week on DraftKings, down to 18-1 after that primetime performance. It was set up so well for him because of no Xavier Howard, but he smashed it. He had another touchdown call back.
Mm-hmm.
Dallas Goedert looks awesome. The player that Jimmy Kemsky thought he was going to be, that he looked like in training camp. He looks really good. This screen pass TD that they threw to him, I mean, that was an awesome play. Awesome win from an awesome team. Jalen Hurts in the second half was playing with a brace on his left knee.
Yeah.
And that caused some concern, but it sounds like he's going to be fine.
Yeah. I mean, people they asked him about it after the game. They said they didn't want to give details. He's a tough guy. He'll be okay. This tush push stuff, man. I mean, he's up to 6 rushing touchdowns from inside the 5-yard line already this year. He has 29 rushing touchdowns in his last 37 regular season games. And they were running the tush push like when they were just trying to kill the clock in the fourth quarter from like 2 and 3 yards away. I mean, it's really incredible. Seahawks. Quiet, nice, fine win over the Cardinals. Big story out of the Seahawks game, of course, was DK Metcalf ended up inactive due to his hip issue. So you get JSN. Now, JSN snaps didn't really increase. He was still only in for 3 wide receiver sets, still 64% of the snaps, but ran around on 82% of the dropbacks. And most importantly to me, with DK Metcalf out, JSN had a real ADOT, a real average depth of target of an NFL wide receiver, 10.3 yards. Made a big difference. Ended up scoring a touchdown. Evan, what did you think of Seahawks win over the Cardinals?
Yeah, a real nice game for Jackson Smith and Jake, but really nice game for Jake Bobo, the Seahawks undrafted free agent. He wound up leading all the Seahawks receivers in snaps in this game. Jake Bobo, really interesting background. He was fairly productive in his college career. He ran a 4.99 40 at his pro day. And he had like over a 7-second 3-cone. But I mean, sometimes dudes are just technical, especially at the receiver position. You don't have to be the greatest athlete in the world. Sometimes dudes they can run routes and they know where to be on the field and they catch everything. And like, that's Jake Bobo. I thought about pivoting to him, late swapping. I wound up not doing it, but that would have been a nice little move there if you made that. Cause I think he was like 3,200 on DraftKings or something real cheap.
Yep. This game without Zach Charbonnet, Kenneth Walker gets 100% of the running back carries and 3 of 4 running back targets. Should have had a way bigger game. I mean, he got stuffed twice at the 1-yard line, did Kenneth Walker. But yeah, I mean, if you had Kenneth Walker, you played Kenneth Walker. I still think it was right. 29 touches in a home game against the Cardinals is just a printing press. His role without Charbonnet is awesome. Yeah.
Was hoping for a little bit bigger of a game from Geno Smith, but, just the game was it was always in hand. And so they wound up going really smashing the button on the running game. So I understand it.
49ers have now lost 2 games in a row. Week 6, they had the bad loss on the missed field goal to the Browns. Week 7, last night, they go to Minnesota. I think one of the worst games I've seen Brock Purdy play in the NFL, if not the stone cold worst. I know that's like led people to panic and be like, oh, Purdy, he is the 7th round pick and they can't win a Super Bowl with Purdy. I could not disagree with that more. This small sample stuff on Purdy is just massive overreaction. Evan, what do you think of 49ers game last night against the Vikings?
Yeah, I mean, he had a couple of bad interceptions late in the game. He still averaged over 9 yards per pass attempt. He didn't have Deebo Samuel or Trent Williams. And the rest of the offensive line really isn't that good for San Francisco. And Kirk Cousins was just lights out in this game. So, and the 49ers wound up losing by 5 points on the road. I'm really not downgrading them at all or anything like that. I don't really have any. The only other note I had here is that Brandon Ayuk is up to number 2 in the NFL in yards per route run among wide receivers really getting the job done. I know he had 5 for 57, not a massive game by any means here, but again, I think he's an every week fantasy starter, like wide receiver 2 with wide receiver 1 upside every week.
Yeah, on the Kittle stuff, Kittle had a really nice game here and was actually, I believe, led the team in targets. It's just not that he can't fail, but it's more likely he hits closer to his ceiling when one of Debo or Ayuk is out. Obviously, in this game, Debo was out and Kittle got the 20+% target share. You know, Juwan Jennings and Ray-Ray McCloud just aren't it. I like Juwan Jennings a little bit better, but they just aren't it. And by the way, Christian McCaffrey, man. I mean, barely practices, questionable, plays 100% of the snaps in this game. You know, dude is just unreal. Tampa loses this game home to the Falcons. Bucs are now 1-3 at home. I really didn't have a lot of notes here. The usage in Tampa remains very predictable. The volume is going to be there for Rachaad White. He's always in play in a pinch if you need him. He's just not exciting. And then obviously the pass game is going to flow through Evans and Godwin almost exclusively. So I don't have a lot to say on Tampa. Evan, anything for you on Tampa's loss here at home to Atlanta?
I don't have any notes either, but the Thursday night football matchup column, Tampa Bay at Buffalo, will be posted no later than tomorrow morning. It'll be submitted tonight.
Last NFC team is your Washington football team, aka the Commanders. Managed just 7 points against the Giants here. I mean, really ugly. The Sam Howell sack thing and refusing to get rid of the ball is just crazy. I mean, and it's played out in fantasy defenses against him. The Arizona defense against Sam Howell scored 20. Buffalo defense scored 31. Giants scored 15. I mean, these massive outlier scores come when you have Sam Howell dropping back so much and holding the ball for way too long. Other note I had here was so frustrating. Chris Rodriguez still mixing in 7 carries. Brian Robinson just 8. Why Chris Rodriguez carries? Like, why? I don't have an answer. I'm sorry. But Evan, any thoughts on Commanders laying an egg up there against the Giants?
Yeah, it's such a disappointing loss for them. I mean, that's a game that, you know, if they want to be like, you know, sneak into the back end of the playoffs, like you have to have that game. Sam Howell, 6 more sacks taken. He's on pace for 97. He's got 40 sacks taken through 7 games. The Giants, they blitz a lot, but like it's not like they've had like any kind of a prolific pass rush, but everybody has a prolific pass rush when they play the Commanders. Mm-hmm. That's something that you can literally count on. I mean, you can hang your hat on that. That's a virtual lock. I was going to ask you, I mean, at this point, I think that Chris Rodriguez has earned a legitimate role in the backfield, you know, primarily at the expense of Brian Robinson, but also, I mean, Antonio Gibson is averaging like 4 touches per game at this point. Chris Rodriguez, a 6th-round pick out of Kentucky, 217 pounds, 1-speed grinder. But I mean, he's taking advantage of his opportunities.
Maybe we should have seen this coming a little bit better with the Eric Bieniemy stuff, because like Jerick McKinnon in the Antonio Gibson role, Jerick McKinnon doesn't touch the ball a lot either, but he takes a lot of snaps from these guys. Mm-hmm. They also play Pacheco and CEH. You know, it's just, and their target tree is so flat, just like Kansas City wide receiver target tree was so flat under Bieniemy. Maybe that's something to do with it, but yeah, it's just not great. I mean, not great all around for sure. All right, let's move to the AFC now. We'll start with the Baltimore Ravens. Really, really impressive win over the Lions. Again, they were up 28-0 at halftime, 35-0 after 3 quarters. Best game in terms of results Lamar Jackson has had all year. Could have had even more points. I mean, they got a Gus Edwards 80-yard touchdown in this game. It was just off the wall ceiling performance from the Ravens offense. Evan, what'd you think of them?
Yeah, and that came against a Lions defense that, and rightfully so, a lot of people were talking up as like, you know, the turning point, because we knew that the Lions were going to have a good offense, but all of a sudden they started playing really good defense, and the Ravens just smashed them. And this is kind of the performance that we were waiting for ever since they hired Todd Monken. It took them 6 weeks. They were spinning there. I mean, you would see flashes of it, but they were kind of spinning their wheels a little bit, and then they really, really hit their ceiling in this against a formidable defense. I mean, you got to love what you saw from Lamar, and you know, all of a sudden he's right back in the MVP conversations, and that's where he should be. For
sure. It's such an awesome fantasy asset is Lamar right now. I did like that I got to see Keaton Mitchell for a little bit. Unfortunately, he looked like awesome, like shot out of a cannon. However, did get hurt in this game. I believe it was a knee thing, and we'll see on his status going forward. Bengals were on a bye. They will come out of their bye to face the San Francisco 49ers this week on the road. Seemed like a really well-timed bye for the Bengals. They were starting to kind of tick up and play better, and now they have a long time to get Joe Burrow healthier, to get T. Higgins healthier. So I think a pretty good time on the bye for the Bengals. Obviously a tough spot here in week 8 against the 49ers. Evan, any Bengals thoughts for you as they come out of their bye?
Yeah, we'll also be getting back Orlando Brown, their left tackle, who really hasn't been very good to this point. But yeah, I mean, they should be. This is the healthiest that they've been really since Joe Burrow went down in training camp.
Yeah, I mean, they've got to get it going here because although they did scratch back to 3-3, this division looks really tough. Ravens are 5-2, Steelers are 4-2, Browns are 4-2. Now, I think the Bengals are much better than the Steelers and the Browns, but they have to go out and start proving it, starting with this game here against the 49ers. Broncos get a win over the Packers. Story isn't even like their win. The story to me is that trade deadline's coming up October 31st, and everyone is watching the Broncos to see if Jerry Jeudy gets moved. The reason that you can move Jerry Jeudy and not Courtland Sutton is that Courtland Sutton has this big contract that no one wants to take on. Jerry Jeudy is in the final year of his rookie deal. The option, his 5th-year option has been picked up, but you can trade for Jerry Jeudy and not be on the hook for that much risk. So there's been reports out there that teams are only willing to give up like a 3rd-round pick, 4th-round pick for Jerry Jeudy. That seems a little light for me, even though he's struggled. But anyways, anything on the field for the Broncos for you, Evan, and anything on the trade deadline?
To me, I think a 3rd or 4th sounds right, just because he's got 1 year left, and it's not an expensive year. It's the 5th year it's not an inexpensive year. It is pretty expensive. I think it's like almost $15 million. Mm-hmm. And also, like, he hasn't been very good. I mean, like, let's be real about Jerry Jeudy. I do think that they'll be shopping him, and that could maybe be the avenue for Marvin Mims to get going, because I mean, he's a non-factor right now. Javonte Williams. So Sean Payton talked, and Javonte Williams' usage. I mean, he got 18 touches in this game, and the other dudes kind of fell into the back seat. I mean, Samaje Perine had 5, and Jaleel McLaughlin had 6. And Sean Payton was talking about, I wasn't really familiar with Javonte Williams entering the season. Sean Payton obviously was out of the NFL last year. He didn't draft Javonte Williams. Javonte Williams was coming in with this big injury, didn't know where he'd be physically. I thought that this was Javonte Williams' best game of the season. He did have a sort of a drop, although it was kind of a bad, not the greatest pass from Russell Wilson. He caught all 3 of his other targets, 15 for 82 on the ground. I think it'll be interesting to see if Javonte Williams really starts to pull away, because a healthy Javonte Williams is easily Denver's most talented running back.
Yeah, certainly good to see. Also good to see, I know you mentioned Marvin Mims, but he did run a route on 45% of the dropbacks here in this game. That was his season high as they came off of the long week. Houston will come out of their bye to play at Carolina. We are expecting Tank Dell back for this game. And by the way, I know we already talked about CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud is now the massive favorite to be the offensive rookie of the year in the wake of Bijan missing that game. So CJ Stroud, I think I saw like now minus 180 or something like that to be offensive rookie of the year. And honestly, probably well-deserved. I think Puka has a case certainly too, but certainly well-deserved on CJ Stroud to be the favorite right now. Evan, anything for you on Texans as they come out of their bye?
Yeah, I think you mentioned that Tank Dell should be back. Nico Collins has been awesome this season. He is number 4 in the NFL in yards per route run. In the Texans' pre-bye win over the Saints, reminder, Devin Singletary kind of operated as the Texans' number 1 back over Dameon Pierce. We'll see if they come out changing that. And the offensive line should be in a much better state coming off the bye.
Colts lose a wild game to the Browns, 39-38. I mean, Colts scoring 38 points against this Browns defense with Gardner Minshew is pretty impressive. I will say, Jonathan Taylor looked really good, I thought, in this game. He's still splitting with Zach Moss almost down the middle. They each played 35 snaps. But I expect JT to continue to kind of gradually take more control here. But man, Minshew and Josh Downs have something going on. I mean, these guys have been on the same page in a big, big way, have Minshew and Josh Downs. Evan, what'd you see out of Colts' narrow loss to the Browns?
Yeah, those things. And also, just to expound on Josh Downs, because I have this note ahead of this game against New Orleans, the Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars just carved up the Saints in the slot, and that's where Josh Downs is doing most of his work. So, I mean, I think Josh Downs, look, we have every team available to us this week, but I think that Josh Downs is firmly on the wide receiver 3 radar this week. Awesome matchup, and his usage has really been there.
Oh, I agree. I'd feel good about him as a wide receiver 3 for sure. Jacksonville. So if you guys remember, on Thursday night, it was major doubt whether Trevor Lawrence would even play in this game. People were saying that it's a short week. He has this knee thing. He shouldn't be playing. Not only did Trevor Lawrence play, he played well, and he ran it 8 times for 59 yards. So pretty impressive performance here from Trevor Lawrence. We got another big Christian Kirk game, another poor Calvin Ridley game. Evan, what'd you see out of Jacksonville last Thursday night?
Yeah, all that. And, I have not seen the coverage statistics on Marshawn Lattimore against Calvin Ridley. I'll look that up when I write that stuff up. But, that was my fear in that game, that Marshawn Lattimore was going to wrap up Calvin Ridley, because Marshawn Lattimore has been wrapping up everybody this season. And that's, something that I think that's a trend. Marshawn Lattimore is super, super talented, and when he's on his game, he's always been as good as anybody. Travis Etienne continues to be the backfield dominator. Only 2 touches for Tank Bigsby against the Saints. Yeah.
I mean, Travis Etienne, the answer to the 3rd round of drafts, which the 3rd round was really bad this year, the answer was to just reach for Travis Etienne. I mean, that ended up being the answer. I got some Travis Etienne when he fell to me in the 4th, but, that was the answer. 3rd round, Travis Etienne. Christian Kirk, though, man, cul-de-sac narrative just continues to hit in a big way. Guy's just good.
Yeah, he's been good like 6 games in a row at this point.
Chiefs roll over the Chargers at Arrowhead. Mahomes is back as the favorite for MVP, as the Chiefs are now 6-1. Big thing for me in this game was Rashee Rice. We knew that the role was already growing, expected that to get supercharged with Justin Watson out, and that's exactly what happened. Rashee Rice set a season high with 30 routes on 46 Mahomes dropbacks, gets a 561 line for Rashee Rice. Hopefully you guys added him a few weeks ago when we were talking about this, because I really think Rashee Rice is going to be an asset rest of season in a pretty big way. Evan, what'd you think of Chiefs' latest win, this time over the Chargers?
Yeah, Kelsey was just phenomenal. I thought he looked so good in the Thursday nighter. Before this, he gets the 10 days off, and he come back. I mean, and then he built on that performance. He was the best player on the field against the Chargers, and that's a matchup in which he has historically struggled a little bit. He didn't struggle at all with Tay in the stands.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think you saw the picture that I found of Tay and Kelsey leaving the stadium holding hands. Do you want to react to that at all?
I'm just, at this point, I got to throw in the towel. I'm pretty sure they've consummated. Damn it.
Exactly. Anything else on the Chiefs before we move on?
No, Justin Ross got arrested, and actually his usage had gone up. Well, his playing time. I don't even think he saw a target in this game, but he got arrested for felony criminal damage worth over $25,000.
Yeah.
Like, that's a felony. This is a dude who was not drafted. This is the kind of thing that can lead to you like falling out of the league.
Yep. Chargers. I mean, Justin Herbert has not been good these last 2 games. These have been big games. The Dallas game, he missed a bunch of throws. In this Chiefs game, he missed a bunch of throws. Chargers are now 2-4, and it feels like they're like losing some faith in what they're doing. When you play the Chiefs and the Cowboys defenses, like, it's not going to be easy, So I don't want them to panic whatsoever. Evan, what'd you think of Chargers game out there in Arrowhead?
Yeah, that was a rough loss. I mean, I expected more from the Chargers offense, but maybe I shouldn't be. what exactly happened to Austin Eckler, first of all?
Nothing that I saw.
Okay. All right. I thought I saw somebody expressing concern that maybe he had aggravated his ankle.
I don't think so, but
Okay.
we'll find out on Wednesday for sure on that.
Okay. All right. Maybe they were just making that assumption because Josh Kelly had a decent
Yeah.
game. I think that the Chargers are missing Corey Linsley, their center. I think they're badly missing Mike Williams, who was going to have a big year for them. He's done for the season. Again, they're getting nothing out of Quentin Johnston. Okay, he had one catch for 20 yards in this game. And, I'm like, they're 2-4 right now. Brandon Staley, I mean, unless they really get it together, I mean, I got to think this is his last year. And could that mean that Kellen Moore is one and done with the Chargers? Because there was a lot of excitement surrounding him, and it hasn't gone according to plan.
Chargers' schedule for fantasy is not great. Home against the Bears this week in that Sunday night game, but then at Jets, versus Lions, at Packers, versus Ravens, at Patriots. I mean, not great. However, in the fantasy playoffs, they get to face Raiders, Bills, Broncos. So hopefully we can sneak in there with some Chargers guys and strong. Yeah, Josh Palmer just continues to outplay Quentin Johnston. Oh, and the injury note I had here, which I find interesting. Gerald Everett hurt his quad. Donald Parham's been very banged up as well. For those of you guys who ever played XFL, Donald Parham was like the most dominant tight end in the history of the XFL, and actually was one of the few guys from the XFL to actually parlay that into an NFL job, which he's held for the last, 3 years or something like that. And so maybe we'll get a full dose of Parham here if Gerald Everett was to miss time. Vegas. This is an embarrassing loss. I mean, even with Brian Hoyer, this is an embarrassing loss. You go to Chicago and you get absolutely trucked by Tyson Bagent. The Devontae Adams squeaky wheel thing did work. 7 of Brian Hoyer's first 9 targets did go to Devontae Adams, but he still finished with only 7 catches for 57 yards and no touchdowns on a 27% target share, which isn't even like outlier for him at all. It's pretty standard for him. So ugly times for the Raiders right now. Evan, what'd you think of their loss in Chicago?
Yeah, I mean, should anyone be surprised that Josh McDaniels building like all the scrap heap New England players onto one team isn't working? I mean, this was never going to work. Josh Jacobs, although he continues to dominate the backfield, remains highly inefficient. Michael Mayer, I wouldn't say that he turned back into a pumpkin in this game or anything like that. He was still out there for, I believe, 55 to 60% of the snaps. Yeah, go ahead.
And let me just say that Mayer also got pulled with the starters. They pulled the starters late, and so Mayer's underlying usage numbers look worse because he got pulled with the starters.
Okay, good note. And then, he's also out there playing with Brian Hoyer and Aiden O'Connell. And then, Jacoby Myers continues to be a steal.
Yeah.
He's getting it done every week.
This Josh Jacobs stuff, man, I mean, his role is the exact same it was last year. They're just not scoring touchdowns, and he's at 2.9 yards per carry through 7 weeks. 2.9. He was at 4.9 last year, and yards per carry is not a good stat. It's not a good stat to use, but it's just so striking off of last year. I love Josh Jacobs here in this spot against the Bears, and played Josh Jacobs a ton and just ate it, man. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on why Josh Jacobs has been so inefficient this year versus last?
Well, first of all, I think that yards per carry is a good stat. It's just you have to incorporate it with other statistics as well, and you need to consider context. I mean, and it's definitely overplayed on its importance.
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't have a training camp. Last year was his clear-cut career year. Before that, he was kind of like a mid running back, I thought, and I mean, I don't want to say that he's not a good running back or anything like that. I mean, the situation is less than stellar for the Raiders, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, are we going to get an efficiency game? I was thinking that was the opportunity for an efficiency game.
Exactly.
By Josh Jacobs, and he didn't.
Exactly. Lions, Giants, Jets next up for Josh Jacobs and the Raiders. Dolphins go to the Philly on Sunday night for a really tough spot and lose at the Eagles. Now, they were in the game. Like, they didn't get trucked. I mean, they had a chance to tie it late. So I don't think it was like anything too discouraging from the Dolphins. Jalen Waddle left briefly with a back injury, but did return. Jeff Wilson returned for this game, but he only played 7 offensive snaps and also played on the kick return team. Salvon Ahmed played 18 offensive snaps. Evan, what do you think of Dolphins' loss in Philly on Sunday night?
The Dolphins have been playing with a really banged up offensive line, and they've been able to get away with it through scheming, quick hitters, Tua just getting the ball out at the quickest pace across the league, like by far, run after catch stuff, Mike McDaniel scheming. But in this one, it really came to a head because they were facing one of the most talented defensive lines in the league. The Dolphins were already without their left tackle, Teron Armstead, their center, Connor Williams, his absence has really been felt when he's been out. And then they lost their left guard, Isaiah Wynn, on the first drive to a quad injury against the Eagles, and the Eagles just kind of tore him up. I don't know. You don't seem too concerned about Jalen Waddle.
He came back in the game at least, so
okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Dolphins couldn't run the ball really behind their offensive line in shambles, and didn't hit the explosive plays that they usually do. They had a couple, but not as many as they usually have.
NFL announced that the Dolphins will be their in-season Hard Knocks team. So late this year, whenever you're going to get in-season Hard Knocks, which only means one thing: more Mike McDaniel clips, which is what we all need. New England. Best game that I've seen Mac Jones play in a really long time. 25 out of 30 for 272 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Comes against Buffalo at home. Just really, really good win for the Patriots here. I think it helps them when Pop Douglas is out there, 4.54-0. At least he gives them some speed. Kendrick Bourne, another nice game with Juju Smith-Schuster out here. If I was the Patriots, I would just bench Juju and go with Kendrick Bourne and Pop Douglas as much as possible. Other note I had was Ramondre out-carried by Ezekiel Elliott in this game, 11-9, which is obviously not great for Ramondre. Evan, what do you think of Patriots' win? Impressive win over the Bills.
Yeah, Mac Jones was just in rhythm and on time the entire game, in large part because he was protected so well. He took, I believe, 4 quarterback hits. Yeah, 4 quarterback hits and 1 sack on 31 dropbacks. So he got the protection. And, I agree with you that this was maybe the best game of his career.
Jets will be coming off of their bye to face the Giants in the East Rutherford MetLife Stadium Bowl. When we last saw the Jets before their bye, Breece Hall was up around 80% of the running back opportunities in that win over the Eagles. I mean, if that's sticky and Zach Wilson can keep it competent, it's a pretty good setup here for Breece Hall going forward. We also had the Mecole Hardman trade. Not that that really matters, but Mecole Hardman did get traded during the bye week back to Kansas City. Evan, any Jets thoughts as they come out of their bye?
I just have notes on their offensive line. They lost Elijah Vera Tucker for the year to a torn Achilles before the bye, and Joe Tippmann, their rookie center, needed an MRI on his quad. They've had issues on the offensive line. They've got, quarterback issues. Can Breece Hall continue to overcome those? That will be one of the biggest fantasy stories, I think, in the second half of the season, because when he has, gotten some alleys to run through, nobody hits the hole faster than Breece Hall.
Steelers go to LA across the country and get a win. Great to see Deontay Johnson back. 24 routes on 28 Kenny Pickett dropbacks. Deontay Johnson is just straight up one of the best target earners in the entire NFL. 9.6 targets per game in 2020, 10.5 in 2021, 8.6 in 2022. Now, he's been underwhelming in yards per target and fantasy points per target, but man, the volume is going to be there for him. So it's great to see Deontay Johnson back. Evan, any thoughts on the Steelers win out there in LA?
This is the way that the Steelers, when they're going to win games, and by the way, they're 4-2.
Yeah.
This is the way that they win. They play, pretty solid defense, and they just get by offensively. And they did get some big plays from George Pickens. George Pickens, by the way, number 10 in the NFL on yards per route run right now. The back shoulder stuff to him is really, it's been clicking. I mean, that's one of their best plays on offense is the Kenny Pickett to George Pickens back shoulder throw. I think that Deontay Johnson returning really helped them. I don't think all of a sudden they're going to start playing explosive offense by any means, but they certainly played well, relatively speaking, in this game. Jaylen Warren had a nice touchdown. Najee Harris was all right, and Kenny Pickett 9.2 yards per pass attempt. I don't know, they're not a big time fantasy offense by any means, but we can get some stuff out of them.
Last team today is the Tennessee Titans. They will come out of their bye to face the Atlanta Falcons. Now, Ryan Tannehill had that ankle injury before the bye. He is very questionable. If he's out, Mike Vrabel is claiming that both Malik Willis and Will Levis are going to play in this game. I mean, this is not college football. This is not high school. You very rarely see a plan where both quarterbacks play. Now, maybe they have a package of run plays or something, RPOs from Malik Willis. I don't know. We'll see. The other big story is as the trade deadline is swirling, they trade Kevin Byard, and now we're talking about when are they going to trade Ryan Tannehill? When are they going to trade Derrick Henry? So, Evan, what do you think about Titans as they come out of their bye?
I think that that's going to be really interesting. Like they got the ball rolling on the ahead of the trade deadline with that Kevin Byard trade. That's a big trade. Kevin Byard is like a multi-time Pro Bowler, multi-time All-Pro. I mean, I think that they could definitely get rid of Derrick Henry. Baltimore would be an interesting landing spot, I think, for him. I think DeAndre Hopkins, I wouldn't rule out a trade of DeAndre Hopkins if they're going to go all out on selling. And I think that they probably should go all out on selling. I wouldn't be super quick. I don't know. Do we have any timeline on Treylon Burks?
Have not heard.
Yeah, neither have I. So.
All right. Should be an exciting trade deadline. Again, the trade deadline is October 31st, Halloween day. Interesting day, a frightful day for the NFL trade deadline this year. All right. That is going to do it for this week's Team by Team show. Be sure you are following me on Twitter at Adam Levitan, Evan at Evan Silva, and at Establish the Run. If you're serious about fantasy football, you need to be on Twitter. For producer Luke, for producer Ryan, for Evan, I am Adam. Good luck in week 8.